Shanti,
Shanti.
Sister Denise, let us welcome all those who have been waiting for this session. At the Zoom, I can see there are about 120, and this is also being live streamed at Facebook. So, Sister Denise, would you like to say a few words first?
Well, thank you, Sister Rose. And I know that it's been quite a long time since we did the EGY, and we even had to postpone it from our original dates. So I would like to, first of all, thank everybody for their understanding and patience. Many things have been happening, lots of disruptions, changes, interruptions, interferences. COVID has been striking at our our team here, and we are acquiring victory over that as well as everything else. So this is very nice. And thank you all for continuing to participate in the explorations of Gyan and yoga. And definitely, I think all of us who are involved in organizing it and the translators and everyone is keen that we should move forward, and very appreciative that all of you are with us on this. And so I wish everyone enjoyment of this session for today and tomorrow, where we're going to look at something I experienced, deep calm in extreme circumstances. I don't really want to talk about that too much, but maybe I'll just mention it, that why it came up. Because I moved recently to France, and I'm in a little remote village miles away from everything and everywhere, but somehow it has a very full-on music culture here. And on one occasion, there was an extreme version of that, as you would normally get in like a concert in the Stonehenge or somewhere for the Rolling Stones, and it would be at really massive decibels. So we had this going on from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 2 o'clock the next morning, right outside my window. And it was at the highest possible decibels. And I thought, ooh, it was getting higher and higher as the night went on. And all of a sudden, I found myself somehow catapulted into a state of extreme stillness inside. So there was all this tremendous noise going on outside, and people dancing and everything being very, quite extreme, really. And there I was in this deep state of calm. So I thought, what is this? And I churned on it. And I thought that, well, maybe it's a sign that all the work that we've all been doing over all these many, many years is actually producing results, but we don't see them very often. But somehow we see them at certain moments where things are extreme. And that, to me, was very meaningful. So I'll leave it with that, just to let you know that why we came up with this topic.
Okay, thank you, Sister Denise. As you were describing the situation, I could almost imagine it, and was wondering how would my reaction be if it happened here. Anyway, Sister Denise, you sent a short note on this topic, and it's a good way for us to have an idea and to be able to read through it and study it a little bit. But allow me to just read it so that before we start the session officially, we would all be on the same page. So this is written by Sister Denise for today's session. in the present circumstances, we need to think out of the box to develop the knowledge and yoga and perhaps redefine what service is. Explorations of Gyan and yoga means to take the essential elements Baba has given us, to churn them deeply and to practice them in such a way that what we are and what we do are coherent, consistent, and show the way forward meaningfully. EGY must also consider the importance of continuing education, and we must ensure that the teachings and practices of Raj Yoga remain current and relevant in the accelerating changes of our modern world. Daddy Janki stressed the importance of Niji Gyan, original Gyan. So the perennial questions arise. Who are we? Is this a family? If so, what is a family? Is this a functional or dysfunctional family? Is this an organization, an institution, or what? Is this a spiritual university? If so, what is a spiritual university? Is this a religion? If so, what religion? Can you translate the word dharma as religion? Baba, on many occasions, uses the word paribhasha, a Hindi word meaning definition. What is the importance of defining terms? Does anything get lost in translation? Over the past 40 years, the word movement has been surfacing when describing the Brahma Kumaris. And I think it is quite a good word because it allows for all the variations. Baba calls everyone number-wise, which means there is a wide spectrum. And we will give it to Sister Denise to help us all in exploring Gyan and yoga. So, by the way, Sister Denise, it has been 6 months since we had last our EGY. Yeah, that was sometime in April.
That's incredible because in 6 months, it feels like just a flash, doesn't it? Yeah. So, I mean, I know that time goes according to the clock, but the way we perceive time seems to be changing. A lot of people have been saying for a long while that time is accelerating, but it's getting into warp speed now. So it's amazing. And I think it's quite interesting because, you know, Baba talks to us about our perception of the material world. And one of the ideas I've been thinking about a lot is that everything that we perceive occurs actually in our mind and not out there. And so that refers to the location as well as the duration. I think that when people are very young, time takes longer to happen in terms of how you feel about it. And as you get older, time seems to go by quicker. So we do have to factor the age question in. But I do think that young people at the moment are finding that time is going by very fast. And since he tells us this is a drama, when he says it's a drama, what he means is this is a 3D film, which you can experience through 5 sense organs. So in a normal film, it's 2-dimension, and you experience sound and pictures. But in this film, you experience fragrance and touch and so many things that we all feel that this is real and we're experiencing it in the location where it is. And then he comes along and tells us it's all predestined. And then we say, oh, well, we want freedom. He says, I'm here to give you freedom because you don't have freedom because of negative karma, not because of the fact that this is predestined. And if it wasn't predestined, that wouldn't make you free. It's your karma and knowledge of karma and application of the knowledge of karma that determines the extent to which you're free. So what he's telling us is really very different to what we assume. And you know, he says we need to listen to the Murli, study the Murli every day. And why is that? And it seems to me because by allowing the information that comes out of the mind of God to come into our minds through the eyes and ears, it actually alters our preconceptions. And that is very important because it means that our sense of what's real, our sense of who we are, our sense of what's going on, and our relationship with it is changing. And we, first of all, understand it intellectually. But what we have to do is we have to reach a stage of consciousness where it's natural and automatic for us to perceive the way, maybe the way God perceives, maybe the way he's teaching us to perceive, but it's really very different, and it takes a long time to alter human consciousness. So this is about that. Of course, it takes an entire lifetime. Occasionally, he says that if you have been practicing this for a very long time, it will help you at a time of need. And I think that this is a little signal that I was receiving when I experienced how, even in the middle of all this incredible high-level sound, that I was sort of gently catapulted into a different dimension where I was completely in deep peace. I mean, the sound was there, but it wasn't penetrating into my mind the way it would normally penetrate. And so it was really very different. And I thought that, you know, what's happening at the moment all over the world is very serious. The list of all the so-called bad things that are happening is getting sort of bigger and longer and more dramatic. And so that many people are actually not able to handle it. And I think this began with the COVID, which was 2019, now we're 2022. So it was a kind of 2-year period in which the governments of the world, for medical reasons, changed the lifestyle of everyone. And of course, many people died from COVID. Many people got very ill, some people very lightly, some people very badly. And some people had something called long COVID, which gave a lot of fatigue over a long period of time, and so on. But these things are compounding. If you turn on any news media, you see very dramatic weather events, you see dramatic political events, you see war very close to home, which is escalating. You don't know where it's going. We have the prophecies and predictions that Baba has given us, and they are looking like much more realistic than they did when he first gave them to us. And there is a tremendous insecurity of energy, food, money, and all these things. So people are under very severe stress, actually. And what I observed in all of this is that if you make a comparison between BKs who are really doing the practice and people who are not doing any kind of meditation practice, our ability to handle these situations seems to be quite discernibly better than anyone who hasn't been doing this kind of thing. So there's definitely a very quantifiable, discernible impact. And what's happening now, which is what I'm hearing in many of the different BK meetings, conversations, events, is this little word, what is next? And so I want to look at that a little bit today, because there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And I think whenever there's a situation like that, it calls for us to really look deeply at these questions, which I raised in the write-up, like we must consider the importance of continuing education to ensure the teachings and practices of Raj Yoga remain current and relevant in the accelerating changes of our modern world. So there are a huge number of BKs and people who are connected with Brahma Kumaris, and there's lots and lots of events that different people create to expose people to the organization, the teachings, and so on. And one thing that does come up quite a bit is relevance. Are we relevant? And I think this is quite an important question, because there are actually a lot of people who feel that we're out of date. We have been doing something very similarly for decades, and we haven't really changed the way we do it. And that is very good, because it means that we're not deviating away from the original format. But then if you look at it more closely, I find that maybe we might be deviating a little bit. And so it's a question. What is the meaning of deviating from the original format? I think we need to look at why we do what we do, and what are we really trying to do, and really go deep at what is this. So there are a few questions that I put together, which is a perennial question. It's been coming up for the 40 or 50 years that I have been with Brahma Kumaris. It's actually coming up to 50 years. It's a long time. And so the question are, is this a family? And what is the meaning of family? Because people have their own ideas about what is the meaning of family. It's not been really defined. And Baba uses three words that I've mentioned from time to time, but these are Hindi words that he uses to say what this is. This is parivar, which means extended family. This is sampradaya, which means community. And this is sanstha, which means like an organization or institution. So he uses these three words. And then he uses the English word university. And so clearly there is importance given to study. And the key element of the study is, this is called the original knowledge of the Gita. And there are very, very few BKs who have actually read the Gita, partly because it's in Sanskrit. Of course, it's translated into many, many languages. But it is difficult for people to relate to work with. But I have taken a very special interest in it. And in particular, there are quotations from the Gita that appear again and again in the Murlis, which means that Baba is making a link between what is written in the Gita and what he is telling us. And he says that the Gita has been falsified. So it was falsified in very specific ways. And that would have been around the 8th century, which is the same time when the other religions, the major religions of the world, changed. And that also corresponds with, in our time cycle, that corresponds with the beginning of the Iron Age. So there are a lot of people who say things about these elements in the legends, mythologies, and scriptures, and they say they come from the Copper Age, but in fact they don't. They come from the Iron Age, and there is almost no access to things that come from the Copper Age. Even the temples that were built in the Copper Age in India were, for one reason or another, razed to the ground and then built up again. Take, for example, Dilwara Temple. A lot of people think it comes from the Copper Age, but no. Dilwara Temple was built in the year 1052, more or less. And that corresponds exactly with the time in Europe where the Gothic cathedrals were built, which are the main edifices of Christianity that people relate to. And so all of this is Iron Age. And what was before that, we don't know. Now here we are at 2022, and in Brahma Kumaris, we have seen drastic and dramatic changes. In particular, the main dadis have all left the body. So these are the people who really knew the original knowledge and how it emerged gradually and slowly over time. And these are the ones who churned it and who worked very individually with Brahma Baba to grasp the deep material of the knowledge, which is not much taught to people because, well, everyone's at a different level, and most of the attention is directed to people who are new and people who have a conventional Hindu background. But there's not that much attention given to going into the depth. And so what happens is that people kind of make it up and they say that's going into the depth. And so we need to distinguish between what is really going into the depth and what is making stuff up and mixing it up with other ideas that come from here and there and kind of dilute it. So I think that's quite important to clarify. Then the other thing is that Avyakt Bap Dada is no longer coming. And so everything that we do in terms of the study is going over what was already given. There is no new material coming. So that means we have the totality of the material that Baba is saying to us. We have the last 5 years of Sakar Murlis, and this is because it took many, many years for all the knowledge to emerge. And then we have 40 some years of Avyakta Murlis, 50 years of Avyakta Murlis. And these Avyakta Murlis are now complete. So we have everything, all the Sakar, all the Avyakt, and they are to be churned. Now, there's a lot of people who think that whatever comes into their mind is churning. But actually churning is a fairly specific thought process. So I think that is something that needs to be clarified. But one thing that I do notice is that even among people who really do churn seriously and who really do understand the knowledge well, there are huge variations in interpretation. And so we're seeing that there is no real dogma because of all of these variations. There's the basic information that you hear every day in the Sakar Murli, and then this has gone into the depth of by Brahma Baba in Avyakt form, in the Avyakta Murlis, but there's just still a great deal of opportunity for looking at it this way or that way. And when you come into a discussion among BKs about what something is, you might not get agreement. And so this is a phenomenon. So my feeling is that it would be good if we really go deep into the study of the knowledge, because I think there is enough that we do agree on, but that many, many people, especially coming in soon, they really don't know. So I am very interested in putting that together, making comparisons between the Gita and the Gyan, looking into what emerges when you really churn the knowledge. And of course, I take a lot of benefit from the classes of Dadi Janki, which she used to speak an enormous amount, and most of this was recorded. And of course, that stopped maybe, I don't know when exactly, but around the 90s or the early 2000s, which was the time when her, the combination of her maturity in Gyan and good health and maximum level of kind of intellectual prowess was at its peak. So that those were very valuable classes. And so what does it mean, a spiritual university? I think we really need to go into that. What does it mean, a organization? You know, in a way, to me, the organization part of it is like the infrastructure and the arrangements for everything to be accessible for students of spirituality. So I see that the organization is a structure and architecture, but the study itself is kind of beyond the organization. And this is why I made this kind of distinction between the organization and the yagya. And I call the yagya a flame. The yagya is something in which anything to do with the perishable world has to be completely burnt. And since matter is imperishable, the burning of the perishable means it's transmuted into something different. And that applies not only to just objects, but becoming more subtle, it applies to culture, It applies to morality. It applies to basically anything that changes over time as a result of how people develop it. So this word development, I think, is quite important for us. One of the things I'm thinking about is that the Gyan, when you churn it really deeply, you find that it is not at all simplistic. It's very subtle, very deep. And so I think that it is worth our while to try to articulate what is actually the depth of this knowledge. If you just take the knowledge at face value and you don't churn it, it seems quite childlike, and it was presented in that way for the simple elderly women devotees that formed the big bulk of the Brahma Kumaris. But if we want to reveal Baba, if we want the educated people of the world to grasp what this is, then we need to articulate it in a way that they can relate to it. We have to make bridges between what Baba is saying and where people are in their thinking and in their background and in their culture. Because we do have to reach a point of clarifying what this knowledge is in such a way that it's outside cultures, it's outside any kind of religious context. And I think that the way that Baba has been teaching us over the years has been gradually getting us to a point where we are such a broad-based international gathering of people, and that we relate to each other on the basis of soul consciousness, the knowledge, the depth of our relationship with each other, where culture and religion doesn't have anything to do with anything. And that, I think, is an important attribute. I think that one thing that's really very important and that has come up quite a bit is that if you isolate yourself from the world indefinitely, you lose contact with where people are. And so I think that one attribute of Brahma Kumaris is that we've created our own world, which is very big and covers the whole planet. It's an extraordinary network, but there are many who are quite isolated from the world, partly because of our practices. And so you don't really know how to relate to the world in the way the world wants us to relate to them. So there are some people who perceive us as isolated, different, inaccessible, not relevant, belonging to another time, belonging to another culture, things like this. So I do think that we need to, and as it were, re-enter the world and engage ourselves with the world probably more meaningfully than we have been. And I think that our practice and our understanding of the knowledge is solid enough for us to not worry that by engaging in the world, we will lose contact with it. Because I've also seen that there are people who are in a monastic life, who are very separate from the world, and who have lost contact with the Niji Gyan, as Daddy Janki puts it, and it gets mixed up with their existing religious background. So this is also a phenomenon which we must take into account. And so I think that what's really important is for this idea of EGY, the exploration of Gyan and yoga, to to continue with this effort to articulate what the Gyan is, to put it in a way that is relatable to people of all different cultures. And one thing that I found very interesting is there are many, many people from India who have worked in the West, who have lived in the West, and who are very, very different from the people of India of the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s, and 70s, who really didn't have that much of an integration with what we call Western culture. That's no longer the case. So there are many people from India who really want to understand this knowledge in a way that is, in my view, a little bit Western approach, because this is the dominant culture in the world, and people who are in it, they look at the world through those eyes, so that there's room for that. So in answer to the question, what is next, I would say that we need to shift more and more in that direction, and give a lot of attention, not so much on new people coming in, but on developing the people who have been doing this practice for a very long time. What we're seeing in terms of people coming in is mostly it's people from India who are coming in, and mostly very devotional kinds of people, or people who are interested in social work, improving different aspects of society and so on, charitable work, but that is very much part of the Hindu way. And I think that we need to really focus on the aspect of this as spiritual education. However, what we also have is a gigantic network of people who've known each other for decades, who are in contact with each other through various different means, social media, and so on. Now, since COVID, we are all used to the Zoom, and so we are not really limited by time and space, or time zones, and airplanes, and all that. And people are not willing to go back to the older way. And so sitting in a class, listening to the Murli, then going home again and carrying on with things, it's like the world is no longer doing that. So many people are working from home. So many people, they don't want to travel for the purpose of listening to something that they could listen online. People do want to have physical contact with each other, but not the same as this everyday appearing in class, going away again, doing something which is so regular that it's like a ritual. People want innovation. I think we have to think about innovation. They want this to be developed. They want to participate. They want to see it's going somewhere. People don't like it to be static. And so I think we have to think about that. And one of the things I think is quite important, which has come up quite a bit, is language. As I speak, I know this is being translated into several languages, so I'm very appreciative of our translators. But I think that the dominant language in the world is still English. And all of the material that Baba has given us is translated into English, and with the exception of Russian, it then gets translated into other languages. And language is constantly developing. When the Murlis first started getting translated, there was no internet. There were no online dictionaries. There was only the Bhargava dictionary, which wasn't very good. And so people used to ask each other, what does this mean? What does that mean? And it kind of remained in many ways like that. So I do think that to bring the translations up to a higher level would help a great deal in our understanding what Baba is talking about. And so I try from time to time to work with that. It's a massive task and maybe beyond our capacity, but still I think that it's something important which needs to be thought about. And I think we really need to think of ourselves as autonomous, as people who have full capability to understand things. We don't really need to take the knowledge like a catechism or something like this, or articles of faith. We really need access to looking at it in different ways. And the better the quality of the language of the translations, the easier it is for us to understand it in a way that corresponds with the world as we know it today, which is quite different from how it was in the 1970s when this started being spread into the Western world. And there are many, many of us who came in around that time who are still around and working with it. So I'm going to stop there because I know that Rose probably has a lot of things to bring up, Rose and Vanji, and that you will have also a lot of questions and comments and things that you would like to have considered in this session. So thank you, and Om Shanti for this part. Let us just go deep inside and think about, what am I? Who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Reflect on what we have become by studying, by meditating, by going through many tests, watching each other grow and pass through different layers of the confluence age. What is the meaning of family? What is continuing lifelong study? What is service? If somebody sees me, do they feel that I'm connected with the Supreme Being? How am I doing in my practice? Is it meaningful, coherent, consistent? Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. I was very struck with the word relevant. And as you were talking, I was thinking, or I was asking myself, how do I know whether it is relevant? How do we measure? And somehow I found answer when you said it is important for us to re-enter the world, to re-engage with the world meaningfully. And by doing so, we will be able to also see through the integration our relevance to the world outside.